story actually starts when I met my wife when we were 3 and 4 years old. This was in Orange County, California, and her mother used to babysit me. Our families bought houses back to back in a little suburb, and so her mother used to babysit me when I was small. And the reason I bring this up is my favorite toy as a small child was a slot car track. If you're familiar with this, these are true electric vehicles, and they're those little metal rails there give power to the cars. There's actually a little rut in the road that theoretically keeps the cars from flying off. So my brilliant idea as a kid of about 5 or 6 was if we could make real roads electric, kids could drive. We relieve our parents of that awesome responsibility. Later in the years, I received my electrical engineering degrees from the University of Dayton, and I had the ability to make electric roads. I just didn't have a reason to yet. By that time, I didn't want kids to drive anymore. But I think it was about 10 years ago, we started hearing new terms on the evening news, global warming and climate crisis. And I'll admit, at that time, I wouldn't have labeled myself an environmentalist. My wife was. Julie's always been. I pictured environmentalists as sign-carrying hippies and tie-dye shirts, and I didn't put myself in that category yet. But one day, we were out and working in our garden, and Julie turned to me because she had heard me talk about this electric road idea all my life. I still got drawings from high school. It just fascinated me. She said, "Couldn't you make your electric roads out of solar panels?" And at first, I kind of laughed. I gave her a dissertation and said, "You can't even step on those things, let alone drive on them. They're very fragile," and she gave up. But I continued thinking about this. I thought, boy, all the potential you could have with solar panels on roads, if we could make this happen somehow, it's a brilliant idea. So I started thinking about the black box on an airplane. And what is that but a structurally engineered case that protects sensitive electronics, in this case recording gear. Now they can fish these things off the bottom of the ocean or the side of a mountain, and you can still hear what's on those recordings. So I thought if we could do something similar with some kind of structurally engineered case, that we lay down the road, it doesn't have to withstand an airplane crash, it just has to withstand 18-wheelers rolling over. I shouldn't say just, because that's quite an engineering feat in itself. But if we could make this, and we started talking at that point to universities, we looked at materials. We didn't know what the black box was made of, so I contacted material engineering universities. Penn State University's Materials Research Institute and the University of Dayton's Research Institute were the number 1 and 2 material research labs in the nation. So I visited both, talked to them about what we wanted to do, and at the time, University of Dayton was working on what they called blast-proof glass. At that time, I think it was over 60% of our casualties coming out of Iraq were coming from roadside bombs, or being hurt by roadside bombs. From the shrapnel, when I picture shrapnel, I'm ex-military myself, I think of the metal casing around an explosive. But what they're finding is these roadside bombs are going off, and the glass windows in the Humvees, for instance, become the shrapnel. Just the concussion from the bomb, even if you're not hit by metal, the glass flies into the vehicle, and your upper torso, your head's right in the way. So they were tasked with creating some kind of glass that could resist the bomb at point-blank range. And we talked about that. I said, we can just tweak our formula a little bit, lay it down on the road, and it'll take anything an 18-wheeler could do. So that's kind of where we got started. So assuming that we can make glass that you could drive on, we thought, what can we put inside this structural engineering case? First of all, a solar cell. That's what would collect the power. But we live in northern Idaho, and you get snow here too, I'm sure. And there's a lot of snow in North Idaho, and what happens to a solar panel if it gets snowed on? Blocks the sun and stops working. So we had to put some kind of heating element on the surface to prevent snow and ice accumulation. Now, solar cells have been around for decades, so is the heating element in the rear window of your car. So these are old proven technologies that we're throwing together in a new package. But if you've got solar cells underneath the glass, you can't paint road lines on it either. So how do we get around that? We added LEDs, and this illuminates the road lines from underneath. I'm in my 50s now, my night vision is going. I live on a long mountainous mountain road, long winding mountainous road. And at night it's difficult for me to see. When it rains, forget it, I gotta slow way down. But if we had LEDs illuminating the road lines, it'd be like driving on a video game. It'd become real easy. So these are all safety features built in. To drive those LEDs, you'd have to have a microprocessor board. And once you put that microprocessor in there, you've got a device that can communicate. Each of these panels can talk to each other. They can talk to the vehicles going overhead if you've got the top electronics on it. So you've got a system to communicate. If something goes wrong, for instance, I had just finished up when we began this, I just finished up a job in Southern Italy making a wireless water meter that can send in its readings on its own. And the way it would work is at 3 o'clock in the morning, all the meters would wake up, and they knew who their neighbors were. Each one could communicate about 90 meters, and it knew that there's 4 neighbors I should be able to talk to. And so the routine was, are you there, are you there, are you there? And if not, it reports that there's something wrong with the house at this address, that meter isn't reporting anymore. So the road would work the same way, in that each panel would constantly talk to its neighbors and say, is there anything wrong, are you fine, are you still operating? If anything goes wrong, you know real time because it can radio this in. An all-electric road also allows an electric vehicle to recharge anywhere. Now, we've talked to several EV owners. They love their vehicles, but they all have the same problem. They're not very practical for long-distance traveling. You're not going to take an electric vehicle from here to Florida on a family vacation. You just don't have the infrastructure for it yet. But with an electric road, you can just plug in anywhere. We're talking with the Idaho Transportation Department right now. They want to redo all their bus stops and ports of entry with our solar panels. If that were the case and every state followed that procedure, then you could theoretically drive a vehicle from here to Florida and just pull over to rest area and recharge. But even that static recharging, that takes a while to be kind of a pain. A few months ago, Kenneth Horowitz called me out of Clear Blue Sky. He's the original founder of Cellular One, one of the first cell phone companies. And he's now on the board of directors of an MIT spinoff called Electricity, and they've made a mutual inductions when you have like 2 plates. One of them would be buried in the road, the other would be mounted on the bottom of your EV. And as you drive over this other plate, it sends a charge and recharge your battery while you're driving. And I talked to a company in Utah that's doing this, and they tested their system at 75 miles an hour. So what Kenneth was saying, after explaining all this, he says, we have the system to do this, but that means digging up a chunk of a big hole in the asphalt, putting our system in, and running power to it somehow. So it's not very practical yet. Because what you have is a delivery system. So if you merge these 2 technologies, and you've got your EV, and now you can drive to Florida and charge your car is recharging as you drive, you could have the same or exceed the what's the word I'm looking for? The travel distance of an internal combustion engine. I just read this morning that Tesla's new vehicle can go 320 miles on one charge. So if you can even recharge that, I mean, that's further than I could drive without pulling over, but you could continue on that and charge while you're driving, you theoretically get there in one shot. While I had Kenneth on the phone, I said, I've been wondering about this. I live out in the middle of nowhere, we don't have cell phone reception. I said, we have what we call a cable corridor that goes alongside our road where we can collect storm water and filtrate it, we can put our cables and our power lines and everything. I said, am I correct in assuming that if I put a telephone cable through there somehow, I could put a little 1-foot antenna every mile or so and eliminate all dead spots? He said, you wouldn't even have to do that. He said, you know how when you drive to New York City, you drive underneath those rivers, you don't use cell phone receptions? I said, I don't know. He said, well, you don't. He says, what we need to do is we put a transmitter receiver at the beginning of the tunnel, run a coaxial cable through that tunnel, and cut slits in the side of the coax, the protective shielding. They call that a leaky cable. That allows the signal to exit and enter the cable so you don't lose cell phone reception. And I said, that's great, but my house is maybe 200 feet from the road. Am I going to get cell phone reception? He says, yeah, this works for several hundred yards. So you eliminate all dead spots. It's just not the cell phone system. You can also put a radio signal in there, TV signals. You'd have no more dead spots than you already have a road. So we're glad to hear that. So this is an artist conception, and we actually built this. This is our phase 1 prototype. This top layer is the actual glass. Everything dark you see in the middle, we call it internal support structure, and the bottom is the base. And our artists incorrectly put conduit through it. It actually goes inside the road. So this is an animation of how the light testing would work. We have a 32 by 32 array of what we call individual electronic modules. Each has, I'll get that in a second. Once it's past the testing, then we take it out and put it, that's called a solar road panel. When we put them all together, it becomes a solar roadway.